Actually, I never thought I was going to do something I had personal interest in. In fact, that was at first something that worried me. I worried, am I too excited about this idea? Do I think it's bigger than it is just because all my friends and me are into this stuff? And, everybody, when it's your group, you feel like everyone in the world's doing it and it feels bigger than it is. So that was actually a concern I had at first. And I also thought I might be biased by my own preferences, eating the product that I want instead of the product that the general public wants. But what I realized is in this business, and it's not true of all businesses, but in this business, it actually really helps because there is community. There is a sort of, really deep engagement that happens with customers in these products. And so really understanding who the customer is and really understanding what the experience is like and being into the products enough to try them and play them yourself actually really helps.
Can you take us through the fear along the path? Because you were making big bets again and again and again. So where were the nights that kept you up?
Well, at first it was, how do we prove that we can build a real company and raise that next round of capital? Because when you're dependent on investor money and you're always checking the bank and every month is a month closer to running out of cash, you're dependent on somebody saying, hey, I think this is going well enough that I'm going to put some more money in. And if they say no, you're done, no matter what you think. So that was the first fear. And then, that evolved to how do we beat the competition? We were in a real big battle with FanDuel in the fantasy sports world. And, that was a real existential fight, it felt like, because they were just intent on trying to put us out of business. And eventually we got bigger than them. And so that was a real accomplishment. But in doing so, we ended up attracting a lot of regulatory attention. And there was a period of time in late 2015 where we had regulators coming after us. There were articles being written about investigations and, suddenly I went from, hey, I'm so proud of this company to, people would say, what do you do? And I'd almost be, worried. And I'd say, oh, DraftKings is like, ooh, it doesn't seem to be going so well. So all of a sudden, a lot of the other stuff, the competition, the capital, all felt small when you're, being personally threatened and when your livelihood's being threatened and people are accusing you of things, you didn't do. And eventually we got that all figured out, thankfully. And, feels like a lifetime ago, but it's funny because that experience, it actually makes everything sort of, puts everything in perspective. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how, difficult a day I have, I can always draw upon that and think back to, those tough times. And really it just puts everything in perspective and gives me a lot of, kind of confidence that if we got through that, we can get through anything. And what was also amazing is our employees all stuck by us. We didn't have anybody leave. We had everybody still very excited to stay there, and everybody believed in the mission of what we were doing. And that also gave me confidence that if you can inspire people through the darkest of days to keep going, then you're going to keep very loyal, very hardworking employees for a long time.
Where does rationalizing paying Stugotz $50 million rank on your darkest days?
Yeah, sleeping, had trouble sleeping.
Well, it's definitely up there. I'll tell you that.
Yes, I would assume so.
Could be.
Can you tell us what it is that you're trying to accomplish? I mean, is it conquering? Is it what's the end game, Spence?
Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, I'm not somebody that likes to just, manage things to steadiness. I want to see this grow. I want to get bigger. I want to, make money for our investors. That's very important to me. A lot of people have believed in us and bought in, and even with ups and downs of our stock price, those that have stuck by us and believed in our long-term mission, I want to prove them right and make sure that they are really happy with the investment they've made. I want our employees to feel like they have a fulfilling place to work and that their careers are growing and that they're part of an exciting thing that's, changing the world in some way. And I don't mean to overstate what we're doing when I say that, but I really do think, at least for people like me, who've always been into stuff like fantasy and betting, I do think we're changing things. And I think that, leaving a mark on something that I care about, it's been many, many years where people who wanted to bet had to either go to Vegas or they had to go on illegal websites in the Caribbean or wherever else. And now all of a sudden you can do it in the light of day in so many states. And I think a lot of people really appreciate that. I've had a lot of people who say thank you for, driving this industry and for making this happen, even though we didn't do it all on our own. I'd like to think we played a part.
Do you just not join fantasy leagues because you don't want to deal with the banter? Like, yeah, I know I'm the DraftKings guy. You beat me, good one. But I mean, like, it just feels like heavy as a head.
You know what? I do actually. That is a little bit annoying. I have to be honest with you. So good call. I don't not play fantasy because of it, because I love fantasy so much. I have pared down the leagues, but not for that reason. More just I've been busy. I mean, I hate to admit this because it makes me sound like an even bigger sports dork, but there was one point, I think it was in college, where I was in over 100 leagues across 11 or 12 different sports one year. Now I'm in 3, but I still enjoy it, and I still every single Sunday, that's my day. I definitely am checking the work stats and talking to my team on text message and all that too, but I'm also looking at the fantasy stuff, and my kids are starting to get into it too, which is awesome. I mean, I have a 7-year-old who's like a football fanatic, so much fun. The only thing is he doesn't understand red zone only applies when there's multiple games. When the playoff starts, he's like, Daddy, why can't we put on red zone? I'm like, no, you don't understand. There's no red zone. It's just one game. He's like, no, I get it. Put on red zone.
It sounds like you guys, though, the family likes some stuff that might be compulsive. 100 fantasy leagues. I think you guys need to snort adrenaline as a family together on Thanksgiving. 100 fantasy leagues?
Well, that was me in college. That's not now. Now we're not.
Now he has 48.
Yeah, no, now it's only 3, believe it or not. But my kids haven't actually picked up fantasy yet. My oldest kid's 7, and although he does ask me at the beginning of every day. He's like, all right, who are we rooting for today? And what he means is go check where the money is on the different games. And about a year or so ago, he was like, all right, so we're rooting for this team. I'm like, well, no, that team, we kind of want them to win, but only by 4 points or less. And my wife just looks at me. She's like, you're not teaching our 6-year-old point spreads, are you? And I'm like, yeah, actually I am.
Damn right. What's your go-to fantasy team name?
I try to keep it pretty simple now. I just call it Team J-Robs. I think if I try to come up with anything funny, it just seems lame. And so, or it's something that, people are like, really? Why'd you name it that? And they start thinking there's some deeper meaning in it. So I went away from that. I used to have a bunch of different names, though. I do sometimes change my team name during the year, depending on how we're doing. I had one team that was horrible this year, so I changed the name to, I rotated between New York Jets and Jacksonville Jaguars and Detroit Lions for the team name during the year. And I hope I didn't offend any fans of the Jets or Jaguars or Lions out there.
It's nothing but terrible teams,
Yeah,
just
awful.
Truly dreadful teams. And also, you're not trying at all with the names.
No.
Like you're just
Team J-Rob. Come on.
Not anymore.
Raise your
Not
game.
anymore.
It's why presidents wear the same color tie. He's
Decision
CEO of
fatigue?
DraftKings.
Decision
fatigue.
fatigue.
He doesn't need to be.
Yeah, if you
bothered
think
with a
people are
face.
going to give me a hard time about winning, or what do you think they're going to do in terms of asking me about my team names? I can't get creative. I just got to go straight down the middle.
Jason's Lobos would be a good name.
You want to explain
That's a
to
good
the
name.
audience what it is, why it is we're in business together. And I should tell people, incidentally, we've been telling you, go to FloridaEducationChampions.com to sign a petition to bring sports betting to Florida. This is a fight I want to get into with Jason Robbins because I want to understand what it is that's going on here. But why are we in business together?
Well, I do want to talk a little bit about the Florida initiative, but to answer your question, first, I'm a big fan. As I said, I grew up reading your column. I, loved your ESPN show. I thought it was just so creative and, so refreshing given, just trying new stuff. And I loved it. And when I heard you were teaming up with John Skipper, who's also a very dear friend, John's a great guy, known him for many years. He and I have a very close relationship. Between being a big fan of yours and also John being a very close friend, this was just a perfect partnership for us. And look at what you guys are doing. I know you're just getting started, but wow, congrats. You've had so much amazing success in such a short period of time already.
Thank you. How did you guys go? And we will get to the FloridaEducationChampions.com petition because it's one of the reasons that he's on with us here.
It does seem like it's working out. On Sunday, we walked into the studio and there was poop water.
Yeah, there was sewage
streaming
water
from
coming
the
in through the
ceiling.
vents, but I don't think that's
So
his fault.
No, it's not your fault, but You should put it on your radar.
Really, you want to put it on his radar
Yeah.
that we need some help with the
Yes.
poop
I mean,
water?
he
That was-
already stepped up to the plate once. I might as well try out my.
You begin by
my luck.
asking him for money. This is where you say, before you said hello, really, you were asking for money, and now you're complaining about poop water?
Well,
Otter.
there's a lot of people that want to ask the question, is the U back? And not a lot of people helping the U back. And it's just, Jason, we need you and Jeff Bezos, who I've been told is a University of Miami. Look, I'm out here in these streets in Texas A&M and Alabama. It's something serious, all right? It is a rock fight, all right? We need all of the Jason Robbins and Jeff Bezos money we can find, all right? I got some NIL proposals. Just back channel with me after the interview.
Okay.
Jason, why get into the content game, though? What is interesting to you about the content game?
Well, there's obviously so much overlap with what we do and, with our sports betting and fantasy businesses, and it's both sides of the equation. People read a lot of content and listen to a lot of content, watch a lot of content to know what's going on and to know which players to pick and which teams to bet on. And then when they make those bets or play those fantasy games, they watch the games more. I know for myself, I went from, watching my favorite teams. Growing up, it was the Dolphins and Canes, and now, it's the Patriots. And, I think those were really the teams I watched before I got into fantasy. And then I got into fantasy and I wanted to watch everything. I knew the names of the backup running backs on every team. So it just really deepens the engagement. It makes every game interesting. So there's just a lot of natural overlap. There's a real flywheel that gets created between the content side and the fantasy and sports betting side. And we feel like partaking in both pieces, it's really about reaching our customer in, a full sort of day, right? Our customer is spending a lot of time playing the fantasy games and betting on sports, but they're also spending a lot of time listening to your show and things like that. And we want to be involved in all aspects and engage our customers as much as possible. And, that's really the goal.
Exactly how hard is it to actually get legalized in individual states? Because in this union of ours, everybody plays by different rules, and you're obviously clear in a lot of states. I know New York was a big one that happened over the weekend, but you're playing by different rules and different local governments, and it's got to be such a headache to familiarize yourself with all the proper protocol and just try to be active in a single state.
We have a great government affairs team. They work hard. They work in conjunction with our communications team very closely. But every state's different. We have a saying at the company, every state's a snowflake. They're all different. Some of them you go straight through the legislature, like what we did in New York. Others, like Florida, you have to go to the ballot. And I know you mentioned this earlier, but we're, it's a really down to the wire situation in Florida. We have another week or two to gather signatures, and we're close, but we're not there yet. And I think it's going to be really down to the last moment. So anybody who wants to see sports betting in Florida, wants to be able to play on apps like DraftKings and others that they know and feel familiar with. And also, by the way, this if we are able to get Florida to legalize sports betting, we're going to generate hundreds of millions of dollars for education through tax revenue. So not only is it going to be great for people who want to bet, but also it's going to help a really good cause. And the way you do this is you go to floridaeducationchampions.com. You could do one of two things. One, if you're worried about, because it is down to the wire, getting in on time, you can print out a petition, sign it, and put a stamp on it and mail it back in. If you go there today, there's probably still time though to request one sent to you. If we send it to you, we'll include the postage. So all you have to do is sign it, pop it in the mail, and send it back. But we really need every last signature. I'm worried we're not going to get there. It's going to be really close. So please, everybody, go to floridaeducationchampions.com and get your name and get your signature on there. We need it.
They're not making it easy with this whole mailing it back and forth thing. And instead of just being able to click something.
I think that's sort of the point, though.
Yeah.
I know they make it, it's got to be a wet signature, as they say. And, we have people all over the state outside of grocery stores and things like that. So if you happen to see somebody who's gathering signatures, you can also just go sign on the spot too. But, if you want to make sure you do it, you got to go download or like I said, request it gets sent in the mail to you on floridaeducationchampions.com. But you're right, they don't make it easy. I think they want to make sure that there's real intent. And also, governments aren't exactly always caught up with the latest and greatest on technology. There's still a lot of things, believe it or not, that happen on physical, written paper. And you would think, when you go to visit the Facebook headquarters, or DraftKings headquarters, you check in on the iPad and everything's digital. When I go visit most government buildings, I have to sign in on a piece of paper, and that's pretty much, par for the course, I think.
Jason, my curiosity is, why does this happen on a state-by-state basis? Because the Supreme Court overturning a law, a national law, is the reason why there's been this state-for-state warfare. New York just got it, and I'm sure people enjoyed betting on DraftKings for the first time this week. I know some of our colleagues at Meadowlark Media did. But why is this happening on a state-by-state basis? Why isn't there just a national law that we don't have to worry about what Ron DeSantis is doing in order to get gambling in Florida?
Jessica out here betting unders. She was so happy. She was thrilled this weekend because she could bet Bills, Jets, Giants, Washington unders.
There you go. Yeah, it was pretty nice to launch in New York. I'm excited. I think Florida, believe it or not, Florida actually even has more people, so it's an even bigger state by a little bit. But I think New York's the biggest one so far. To answer your question, it not to get too into the legal side, but since you asked, it could be done nationally. There's no reason it couldn't. What actually the Supreme Court overturned was there was a law that said that states could not individually make sports betting legal. It was a strange law. I don't think the Supreme Court particularly cared about sports betting. I think it was more, trying to set a precedent on, is it possible, is it legal, is it constitutional for the federal government. The federal government can, there's something called the supremacy clause in the Constitution. The federal government absolutely can say something is broadly legal or broadly illegal, and that trumps state law. What the federal government, we found out through this case, cannot do is tell states what they can and can't make legal. If they want to make it legal or illegal, they have to do it themselves. They can't just prohibit states from legalizing something, we found out through this case. So that was the thing that was repealed. And then there were so many states that have been waiting, I guess, to do this, that were ready to go. And New Jersey obviously leading the pack, but now New York and others, that it really, opened the floodgates, and all these states started doing this. Now I think there's just kind of like escape velocity with states making these laws. And of course, when the states make the laws, they're the ones setting the tax rate and taking the tax revenue. So my guess is there'd be an uproar if the federal government said, you know what, we're actually going to make everything legal and take that tax revenue for ourselves. That's my guess. But from a technical perspective, it could go either way. It just happens that this is the way it's happening.
Jason, I need to, because government talk, I don't need to tell you this if you grew up listening to us. Government talk is a good way for me to get the entire audience to tune out. So go ahead and get the fanfare, Mike. I'm going to ask Jason Robbins, I'm going to throw him off balance here by just asking top 3 moments for him as DraftKings CEO, because I want to get into when the leagues and the commissioners and Silver started putting their name on, we're going to allow gambling. I don't know if it's in the top 3, but once sports legitimized you, once sports was no longer scared of gambling, I want to know if that's in the top 3. So we're going to start with number 3. You got to rank these. I know we haven't prepped you for this in any way, so you got to go 3, 2, 1, biggest sort of, aha, okay, we've got something going here with DraftKings that's going to be able to make a splash. Number 3.
Oh, wow. You are putting me on the spot. I'd say number 3 was going public during the pandemic. That was quite a moment. And number 3, I know. Well, see, you didn't prep me, so I might not get the order right. I might regret the order I put them in.
But what happened there? Explain to me what happened during the pandemic. We won't hold you to it. Everyone knows that this is scattershot, and we're just throwing a bunch of feces in your face.
Just like the studio.
Yes, that's right.
Just like being in the studio. So we decided in late 2019, we were in the process of acquiring a company that was going to give us our sports betting technology. And we decided to do it through a special purpose acquisition company, which was, at the time, not that common. Then it became incredibly common. And we were all set to go, everything was great. And all of a sudden, we were supposed to go in early April. And then March 11th hit, sports shut down, and all of a sudden the markets were tanking, and said, wow, we've had some bad luck, but this one might be the worst. And then all of a sudden, a week or 2 later, things turned around, and we said, let's go. So we took the company public. It was really strange because I had this vision that we were going to go ring the bell at the NASDAQ and everybody's going to be in person celebrating. And instead it was everybody over Zoom. And so it was a little bit of a weird one. And we had, you know, like I said, we were buying this company. So I had this idea I was going to go and visit all their offices, and all of a sudden everything shut down. But everyone pulled together, and amazingly, we just, you know, we powered through it. And it's been a wild ride, even though we've only been public a little over a year and a half now. So that's number 3.
Number two.
Number two, I think probably number 2 would be, you know, you referenced this in a way when we did our first league deal, which was with Major League Baseball. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, you know, leagues are getting behind daily fantasy sports. And then eventually they got behind sports betting. And that's when I knew it was here to stay. I mean, because, you know, that was always the source of the opposition. If you look at why that Supreme Court, the law that the Supreme Court struck down happened in the first place, it was because the leagues were pushing for it back in the early 90s. And, you know, the leagues for decades, I mean, for almost 100 years, going back to the days of the Chicago Black Sox scandal, have been against this sort of stuff. And to see this new wave of commissioners with, you know, Adam Silver and Roger Goodell and Manfred and Bettman and all these, you know, Jay Monahan at the PGA, all these just, you know, forward thinking guys that are saying, hey, why are we against this? Our fans are doing it. Why do we want them doing it on offshore books when we could be doing it in a legal, regulated, you know, out in the light, and we could be partnering with them? And it's a core part of what engages our fans. And so that was a special moment. And then I'd say the first moment.
Hold on a second. Where our time, he gave you the spot after Major League early on. He gave you the spot, and you were too respectful of the CEO is what happened. You didn't go with comedy. You were scared to interrupt him.
Quick bites here, Jason. Quick bites.
And well, yes, we give you a one sentence, and this is big one right here. This is number 1 right here.
It's Trajan Bandy's pick 6 against Notre Dame, right?
Here is number 1, according to Jason Robbins, the big good luck moment of like, okay, our business is going to be sailing from here is
when we were under, you know, I mentioned earlier that regulatory pressure. And Virginia, which was the first state to do it, there ended up being dozens, passed the law regulating fantasy sports. And it was more of a sigh of relief moment where I was like, all right, there's going to be at least one state in the country that we're going to be able to operate. That's great. And then, you know, many more did it after that.
All right. Again, we remind you, FloridaEducationChampions.com. We got to work on our timing. It's our first time, though. It's always awkward the first time.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Always awkward.
Yeah, we will talk to you.
Are we doing a good job?
If we were together in person, you could be kicking me under the table. That's one of the COVID issues, right?
Did you notice?
If you were in person, I'd be getting some money under the table.
Oh, for the love of God.
I'd be securing the services of all
Michael
the
really has just got a one-track mind, doesn't he?
He really,
got to bring the U back.
Really
I asked myself, much like you in 2020, I was like, what am I going to do to get in the game? And very clearly, it's under the table NIL deals. That's my calling.
Chris Cody, how are you feeling about the fact that Jason Robbins had already said that he was only in 3 fantasy leagues? Now, you weren't listening. He said, you accused him of 48 fantasy leagues now, and he corrected you and said 3, and that's the only interaction you two have had.
I don't feel great about it. You know, I just was trying to be like, you know, exaggerate the point a little.
Yeah, but you weren't listening. You clearly weren't. You clearly and obviously weren't listening.
You know, I noticed Jason didn't put the big mega deal with the LeBatard show in his top 3. I wonder where that might
That was
rank.
number 4.
Number 45?
Just missed the cut. We got a little more time to prove this one out and make it number 1.
Can you go through real quick before we let you go? And again, a reminder, FloridaEducationChampions.com. You sign a petition if you want sports betting to come to Florida. You're talking about real big highs and lows. And when you're acquiring these big things, what are what's an investment you missed out on because you got an opportunity and then you hit yourself in your forehead and you're like, man, I blew it. I should have done that.
Well, I think we probably couldn't have done this, which is why we didn't. But when we first, you know, right after we went public, we raised hundreds of millions of dollars. It was the most money we'd ever had as a company. Now we have billions, but we debated, do we put a little bit of it in Bitcoin? Bitcoin was in, you know, the $15,000 to $20,000 price range then. And we decided that was just going to not go over well with investors, even though other companies like Tesla and Square were doing it at the time. And we would have made a lot of money off of that. So I wish we had, but it was probably the right call because it's a new public company. And I don't think that would have been a wise idea.
Jessica, what do you have for Jason?
Hypothetically, if the state that I live in happened to get DraftKings this weekend and I signed up and I forgot to use promo code Dan, is there a way to retroactively add that in?
Of course, of course. I think you know how to get to us, so you can do that. By the way, what kind of dog is that in the background?
She's a rescue. Thank you for noticing.
Beautiful
She's trying to
dog.
sit on the same seat that I am, so it's not working out very well.
Not really a breed, Jess. Just
That's really
Well,
she's a rescue, it's not
she's a
breed.
rescue. She's
a
she's not
rescue
from a
dog.
breeder. I don't know what breed she is.
he's a mutt.
She's a
Okay.
mutt. Yeah.
There you go. That's the answer.
What are you laughing about back there, Chris?
That was just fun.
Okay, very good. Jason, thank you. Thank you for being on with us. FloridaEducationChampions.com. You sign the petition if you want to bring sports betting to Florida. Greg just wants to hear some more about how you read his columns growing up.
No,
Oh, yeah.
well, I appreciate that, and also I appreciate. I think I heard you mentioned earlier you're a big fan of the Greg Cody Show podcast.
Oh,
I wanted
Jesus.
to.
That's not what he
He
mentioned.
never said
I
that.
thought
He
did.
doesn't know what that is. He
I
did not mention
thought
that.
he
He
did,
did
but-
not.
But I
I
feel
heard
like
it.
in the category of missed opportunities, Jason. Off air, I want to put you together with my business team, my pod business team,
Will
because
you
I
stop
feel like
it?
that's a real
All
opportunity
right.
for
Well,
DraftKings.
how much
Thank
of
you.
this
It's not
do
a
you
part of
get,
LeBatard and
Jason?
Friends.
Jason, people come up to you and they just see money, right? Just about people come up to you. They can't be
How
this
dare
brazen.
you?
They
How
can't.
dare
They
you?
can't be this overt where they're just like, "Hey, can I have money?" But you're getting 100 requests like that a day, correct?
You know, Dan, not everyone has as much integrity as you. A lot of people are just in it for the
Thank you.
money.
Dan took $50 million from you.
That's true. Yeah, well, you know what? That's a good point. That's a very good point.
And just talk to you for a half hour about FloridaEducationChampions.com because we want sports betting to come to Florida because all of this fills Stugotz's pockets. Like Stugotz, the more money that's being made in Florida, I don't know how this fight works. I don't know the specifics of it, and I don't know if we drown in the details, but to fight Native Americans and the Seminole Indian tribe on gambling, what has that process been like?
Well, we're not looking to fight with anybody. I mean, in fact, the ballot initiative that we're trying to get, on the ballot in 22 in November, that would include the ability for Seminoles or anyone to offer sports betting. So we're trying to create an inclusive market where everyone can operate and the best products will win, and customers will have the choice of what they want to play, and they'll be able to pick. And so we're not really trying to fight anybody. I know that, at least in Florida for a long time, there's been a very sort of monopolistic type of setup with casinos and things like that. We view this as different, but our goal is certainly not to get into a fight with anyone. Our goal is to open it up and let the customer make the choice.
Well, but you mentioned that FanDuel tried to end you guys, right?
That was back in the daily fantasy days. That was, feels like a lifetime ago, back in like 2013 and 14. We actually have a great relationship with FanDuel now. We do this together with them. They're actually tag teaming with us on this ballot initiative. So two of us are co-funding it. So we have a great relationship with FanDuel now. We have a lot of respect for what they've built. And, I think we work very well together on these types of things.
But you did point out that you got bigger than them.
And fantasy, yeah. I mean, they're definitely doing great on the sports betting side, and so are we. But, fantasy was a battle. I think fantasy was a bit different because both of us were startups at the time, and it felt like there's only room for one. And, it was a battle to raise money from investors. And but times have changed now, and I think we're in a different situation. We collaborate very well with that team over there now. They're a great group, and we have a lot of respect for them.
Jason, good meeting you, sir. Look forward to doing business together in the future.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you having me on.